Good morning if you're joining us from the States, and welcome, or good evening if you're joining us from Asia. Welcome to our webinar on the opportunities for telecoms operators to enable and monetize enterprise AI. My name is Phil Laidler. I head up the consulting practice at SDL Partners, and I will be taking us through today's webinar and helping to facilitate the panel session. So before we get going, a little bit of housekeeping. Just move on next slide. We're going to run through a little bit how to use this platform, get your input. We want this to be an interactive session. Then my colleague Kuba is going to introduce the research that SEO Partners has recently undertaken into the impact of enterprise AI on operator networks and services. Then we're going to hear from Andy Schultz, who's going to take us through Cisco's Agile Services Networking and how that supports enterprise AI. And then we've got a panel discussion. We're inviting you all, and I'll show you how to do this in a minute, to submit your questions to the panel and drive that discussion before wrapping up for the day. So I'd like to now introduce the tool for those of you not familiar with it. Everyone who's joined as an attendee is in listen-only mode. If you need us, please do type a comment. You'll find that little control panel on the right. And we do invite you, as soon as you get questions that you have for the presenters or for the panelists, please put them into the Q&A. We will endeavor to address the questions live. Those that we cannot address today, we will address offline and get back to you and share them with all of the attendees. We will also be sending you copies of slides and a link to a recording for the session, so you don't need to do any screenshots. You'll be getting all the slides. And I should mention that we are showcasing some of the research results, but that research will be made available in about a week's time. You can download that paper as well. So that's a wrap up for today and some of the background research. And in terms of today's speakers and panelists, I'd like to thank Matthias, who's VP and Chief Evangelist at Aurelian. We're also joined by Jawad Salimi, Director of AI and Cloud at Telenor. Andy Schultz will be presenting and joining the panel. He's the Vice President of Product Management from Cisco. There's myself, and my colleague Kuba will also present our findings. So that's the panelists. As I say, we will be sharing the results of this and look forward to having your questions and seeking to address them in the panelists. So over to you, Kuba.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Phil. So yeah, just a quick introduction from me. So I'm Kuba. I'm one of the senior consultants at STL, and I co-lead our AI practice. So really looking to understand, how telcos are impacted by AI and what role they should play in this new emerging AI ecosystem. So first, just want to set the scene and kind of define what we mean when we talk about AI, because obviously it's such a big topic. And broadly speaking, we see two main roles for telcos in AI. The first one being telcos as consumers, so using AI to optimize internal operations and drive transformation. And we have published a lot of research on this topic, so please check out our website for that. Because the second role we see is telcos as enablers and providers of AI, and that will be the focus of today's webinar. So this is really, telcos helping their customers on their AI journeys by delivering infrastructure or connectivity and a range of products and services. So in this session, we'll be sharing, as Phil mentioned, the findings from a recent research program. So just to give you a quick overview on what we did. So we ran a survey with 300 enterprises globally. And we spoke to AI decision makers, influencers, and implementers. And we really wanted to understand their AI adoption. So the purpose of their AI adoption, what some of the use cases they are pursuing, what infrastructure they were using, what their challenges are, and then also who they look to partner with, who are their key partners. And we focused on industries that we think are most likely to drive AI adoption. And we supplemented this survey with some expert interviews. So we spoke to AI application providers, to some telcos, and to some data center providers. And then finally, we carried out some quantitative modeling to essentially understand the impact of AI on telco access networks. using the input from the primary research I've just talked about, as well as existing STL research. So we'll be able to share some of the findings, but as Phil mentioned, the full report will be coming next week, and we'll share that with you then. So just to get into it, the first one of the key findings from the survey is, when we ask enterprises up front, who do they turn to support them in their AI adoption journeys? Who's their first port of call? I mean, somewhat unsurprisingly, they turn to the hyperscalers, to IT consultancies and systems integrators, to network infrastructure providers, and then to AI solution providers themselves. So, relatively few enterprises chose connectivity providers as their first port of call. But it's not disastrous. Still 9% selected connectivity providers, which is still which is okay. But we really think the telco industry needs to raise its profile as the first port of call for enterprises on their journey. And it's not all bad news. There is some good news, and that's when we drill down and specifically ask enterprises about their connectivity providers. Relatively few selected them as passive enablers or kind of irrelevant. The majority see telcos as having qualities and strengths in both the infrastructure side, but also on the AI integration side, which is obviously really encouraging. And then when we also asked enterprises, what do they want to see from, what they want from their AI partner, they said, they wanted a trusted partner with proven security, compliance, and enterprise-grade governance. And obviously, we think that strongly aligns with telco strengths. Telcos being national players and regulated and secure industry. So, we think telcos can and should be seen as strong AI partners. However, we don't think that telcos are necessarily engaging enterprises as well, as effectively as they should be or could be. And that would mean they're not raising their profile of enterprises. And so I guess the question that we're answering today is, how can they raise their profile? How can they be kind of front of mind for enterprises? And that gets me onto this. So from our research, we think telcos should focus on two broad domains in terms of becoming a stronger partner for enterprises. So first of all, AI infrastructure, and that includes both the connectivity and the compute. And then AI products and services. So we've got AI solutions, cybersecurity, and AI professional services. We'll dive into some of these opportunities. You won't have time to get to all of them. Again, everything will be in the report that follows. But first, one of the questions we kind of always get asked is, how will AI impact telco networks? And based on some of the modeling that we've done and that I mentioned, we don't think that AI will create a tsunami of traffic that kind of overwhelms fixed and mobile access networks. So we think the net impact directly caused by AI will be relatively modest, and we've looked up to 2028. So we forecast this out to 2028, and we looked across enterprise, small business, and consumer traffic. And essentially, we looked at 10 AI use cases that we think will drive most of this net new traffic. And again, these new cases, are directly driven by AI. So this traffic would not exist without AI. And that's not to say that all the other traffic is completely untouched by AI. Much of it, will be influenced and have some influence by AI, but it would have occurred regardless. So on the chart, the bit in the yellow, that bit represents that net increase. And we also considered substitution effects. So obviously AI in some circumstances actually reduces the level of network traffic. So we've considered that. Again, we have a full methodology section in the report. Another thing to say is, also most of this net new traffic will be uplink, which is significant, as obviously typically access networks are kind of traditionally geared towards more downlink. So not a huge impact on access networks, and most of it will be uplink. In terms of the key use cases that we found, So yeah, just some of the use cases we looked at, but the first being computer vision for security. So we think obviously this is quite significant in terms of just because of the sheer number of endpoints, the number of cameras for this use case, and obviously the fact that this is video heavy. So obviously the volume is going to be quite high, and we're only looking at the kind of AI portion of that traffic when we look at this use case. The second is chatbots. And again, this is a use case where obviously we consider the whole substitution effect. So many users are using it to replace traditional search engines. So the traffic going there is decreasing as this is coming up. So we've considered that. But overall, that the adoption and the use of chatbots is increasing. But another really interesting point, I guess, that we looked at is the nature of data. That's also changing. So today, lots of the interaction, both input and output from these chatbots is text, and we see that shifting towards more audio and video in both directions. So that will obviously cause more volume. And then the third one being smart homes. I guess as AI capabilities increase, the use cases and the devices are increasing. So also seeing some impact there. So I guess some of you may be disappointed by these findings. But what's important to say is, I guess what we see is the telco industry is only the tip of the iceberg, and a lot of the growth is happening where in areas that are not immediately visible to us. And that gets me on to the first opportunity we wanted to highlight, which is AI connectivity. And so I guess we've just ruled out broad access networks as a major growth opportunity, but we do see potential in the data center interconnect space and certain types of enterprise connectivity. And so obviously we're not including data center interconnect as part of access here. So that's why we're still saying there's minimal impact on the access network. So just to double click into this. So data center interconnect, we're talking about connecting hyperscale data centers, regional data centers, edge data centers, and we see this area is really booming. And what do we mean by kind of AI grade interconnect? And we think it needs to be programmable, it needs to be flexible, created on demand. It needs to be elastic and flexible to handle spikes in traffic and support rapid scaling as enterprises adopt more AI. Obviously, it needs to be highly secure and ultra high capacity, and some of the volumes between these links is quite massive. And then finally, have multi-link redundancy. So obviously, this is critical for resilience, and this is particularly important during the training cycle. So if networks fail during the training, the models have to kind of start over to an extent, have to start that process again. So obviously, that's wasting time and money. So that's on the data center interconnect piece. On the enterprise connectivity piece, so for some security conscious enterprises, they are choosing to manage the AI lifecycle entirely on premises or mostly on premises outside of hyperscaler data centers. So this is training, fine tuning, running models, and a lot of it on proprietary data sets over their own networks. So even though this is a small segment, it is definitely generating a clear demand, and we've heard that there's a demand for these kind of private links. And so I guess in general, the bits on the right, the enterprise connectivity is the natural area, natural right to play for a lot of telcos. But we are definitely seeing a lot of some telcos moving into data center interconnect space, and we're seeing players like Lumen in the US really doubling down on this area. And then we're also seeing some interesting new entrants, for example, Lightstorm in India, looking to capture this boom. So that's on the connectivity piece. So then to go to the AI compute piece. So a lot of telcos, are now looking to offer AI infrastructure and AI compute. So, we are seeing, what we are hearing is that some changes in technology and the consolidation of a network infrastructure means that some established use facilities can be released and reused to host AI compute. So that's one model. Another model is building out entirely new facilities to support this compute. And we've got someone from Telenor on the panel, and they'll be able to speak to this to see to hear what they're thinking there. So then we've kind of categorized the two types of AI facilities that telcos can play in terms of an AI factory and an edge site. So an AI factory, these are quite large facilities in tens to hundreds of megawatts, and we think most of the bulk of requirements will be met by these AI factories. However, we do also think that some of these requirements will be met by smaller, more distributed edge sites. And we're not talking about kind of tiny edge sites here. We are talking about into the low megawatts. So these are not single racks. So those are the kind of the two broad types of facilities that telcos are looking to offer. In terms of the business models, I mean, there's different opportunities here. So we've got going from colo and just kind of offering space and power to providing infrastructure as a service, providing some of the actual hardware that will run some of these AI workloads, whether that be GPUs or MPUs, etc. And then finally providing as a platform service and adding that platform layer on top of all this. And then you can see some of the telcos that we've seen participating in the space below. So that's on the AI compute side, and that kind of covers the AI infrastructure piece. On the AI products and services, so we track. So we've got a tracker called the Generative AI Adoption Tracker, where we look at global announcements from telcos adopting Gen AI, and we update this quarterly. So those are the results you're seeing on the left-hand side. So initially you can see the bit in the grey is kind of the non-productized adoption. So this is adopting Gen AI for internal purposes and use cases. And then you can see over time this is shifting more towards productizing these offerings. So that is for B2B solutions, but also increasingly to B2C and now B2B and B2C together. So in terms of how telcos can how they can get into space and what they're doing, a lot of the announcements that you'll see, they are some form of resale. So finally, they may be kind of tweaking and adapting some of these AI solutions, but a lot of it is reselling AI solutions. And I think this is all good. I mean, I guess the only downside of that is low margins. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It kind of offers a quick go-to-market, and it's a good way to become quickly relevant with enterprises. Others are looking to kind of infuse AI capabilities into existing products and services. And then finally, others are looking to create, and these can be more horizontal applications, and telcos here looking to kind of productize their internal capabilities. So whether that be chatbots for customer service or agents for some internal operations. And then yet others are going to more vertical applications, if they obviously have that expertise within the vertical. So that is the kind of the overview of how the telcos are looking to offer AI solutions and products. So yeah, I guess back to this side, won't have time to cover cybersecurity and AI professional services today, but just to say quickly, we definitely see in cybersecurity a real opportunity for telcos, whether that be providing digital identity APIs and leveraging some of the quite unique data sets they have. For example, mobile operators have a lot of the SIM data, which can be used to verify users. And obviously there's a lot of demand there because, let's say, platforms looking to verify humans rather than bots on their platform, or trying to counteract AI-driven scams and fraud. So that's one opportunity. I mean, it's also for some an opportunity to provide more managed cybersecurity services, just because the landscapes and the threat landscape is increasing because of AI. And then finally, the AI professional services. So we think, for some large and ambitious telecoms operators, they can move into this space and essentially become more of an AI, more of an SI. So, whether that be helping kind of enterprises set up their data to make sure it actually feeds the AI systems well, or fine-tuning models for their own purposes, or helping them in general, with their AI strategy. So those two big opportunities as well, but they'll be covered in more detail in the report. So I guess in summary, to become a stronger AI partner, what should telcos do? And I guess the first point here is, I guess, be selective. So obviously we've outlined broad opportunities across the AI landscape, but these will vary by the telco, by their ambitions, investment appetite, the market context. So whether that be on the demand or the competitor landscape. So each telco must decide across the buckets that we've outlined, what is their role. What do you want to build? What should you partner with? Where should you compete? And I guess these opportunities, they should really focus on solving real customer challenges and not just pursuing technology, and not kind of joining just the AI hype. Next, leveraging security and regulatory trust. I mean, these are real key differentiators. Telcos are national players, highly regulated, security conscious, and that aligns with enterprise needs. So if you lead with that, leaders, your experience with doing this for yourself, for your internal operations, therefore you can help enterprises in their journeys. That'll be a really compelling narrative. And then finally, is on sovereignty. So in some markets, not all, granted, there is an opportunity for telcos to address the sovereignty requirements. I'll just skip them. To address the sovereignty requirements. So again, these position telcos as kind of trusted AI partners, and if they take the strategic approach. And that's everything that's from us on this. Do we want to go to the poll now, or should we go to Cisco?
No, I think, thank you very much, Cubes. Thanks for that. Something, can I say you're absolutely spot on time. Well done. So what I want to do is now move on to Cisco's sharing how it is supporting service providers with ensuring their solutions for enterprise AI. Just before I ask Andy to kick off on that, I just want to remind everyone, please put your questions in the control and Q&A. If you've got any questions, either from Kuba's presentation or Andy's presentation, or that you've got for the panelists, don't hesitate, put it in there now. We will be trying to pick some of those questions and get them answered by the panel. But now hand over to Andy to take us through, how does Cisco see its service solutions supporting that push for enabling those AI journeys?
Yeah, appreciate it, Phil, and thanks, Kuba, for the sharing of the survey. We find that very interesting. I think looking at it through the angle of how enterprise customers are consuming AI services and what are their dependencies and potential partnerships. I think that's a great way to look at it. Cisco has obviously purview into the enterprise market. We are arguably the leading network provider for enterprise connectivity, but I work more on the, not that I don't work on the enterprise side, but primarily anybody building large networks and operationalizing AI on top of those has been a key focus for us for quite some time now. And I want to talk about some of those services. So let's go to the next slide and talk about how we see things. I'm going to be to the point and talk about specific use cases and how we're solving for them in relation to AI and operationalization on the network. Kuba talked about kind of directional change and inter DC traffic. We see the same thing, a high propensity for new requirements and a higher prevalence of things that cannot be completed within one data center, and the need for higher volume and efficient data center interconnect for AI services. So I want to talk about that. The second piece is the overall network and how that's put together to operationalize AI, in addition to the services that really are paying the bills for all of our operator community. How does that programmable network profess itself? What are the key requirements, and how are we uniquely solving for that? So I want to talk about that. And then finally, secure connectivity for AI, the importance of device, network, data, level security, top to bottom is key. I think you could almost, as much as you want to say AI is the first thing that in our discussions with our customer base, security it really goes toe to toe with that. And so making sure that the solutions that we're providing from a connectivity standpoint are indeed secure and done in a responsible and reliable way, that's important too. So I want to talk about that. So those are the three things. We can go to the next slide. Let's get started on data center interconnect. This particular use case and all of the use cases I'm going to talk about materialize on top of Cisco Agile Services Networking. This is an architecture. It encompasses our portfolio. So this encompasses optical solutions, it encompasses routing solutions, it encompasses automation solutions that are on top of that, and the aggregation of all of those three things all present itself under Agile Services Networking. We put together this network and define phases that can build out use cases, and then we evolve and innovate on top of those. So one of those is data center interconnect. This is a pretty simplistic diagram where we're looking at two data centers left to right, and in between we have routers that are connected via DCO optics. The use case is relatively simple. We are converging devices, and when you have this direct connection between data centers, how can you do that most efficiently in terms of cost, power, just operationalization, troubleshooting? We believe that using DCO optics, where we can collapse the transponder function into the actual optic itself and bring that level of intelligence where you can marry the routing layers and the optical layers to provide an optimal service for this, is really the most efficient way to do this. We've seen, and we'll talk a little bit in a few slides here about the customers using this, but we've seen a lot of success and a lot of adoption of this. And this really, we see this across our enterprise customer base, our service provider customer base, the hyperscalers, neocloud, sovereign cloud, anybody that's operationalizing this sort of network environment, this is a very effective solution. There's some representative numbers around TCO savings and power savings that some people have realized. We'll see some real life examples with the customers themselves. We have this uniquely supported across all of our portfolio, and as new optics continue to come out, as we go from 800 into 1.6, you will see faster adoption, especially with wider adoption of AppSell in the optic community. So really effective solution here. So this is the first one I want to talk about. Let's go to the second one here. We can move this. Yeah, thanks. The second solution here is provide programmable network. So this is the overall network. And so you can see we've augmented our two data centers. We've added a customer campus. We've taken that CSP edge router. We've continued to use those DCO optics, but now we've implemented the concept of network slices. We've added on from our hierarchical controller to the IP network controller. So we're now controlling not only the optical layer, but we're controlling the optical and the routing layer. You can see wide different interface support all the way down to 10 gig, all the way up to 100, 400, 800 in the middle. And like I said, we'll continue to go well beyond that as we move forward. And the key point here is, as you define network services, this needs to be done in the most simplistic way. We have definitely put our innovation and our thought into segment routing as our baseline transport and service layers. SRv6 specifically is, we believe, is the most optical or optimal solution. And in that context, you can provide this context or this concept of network slices. Network slices really can be defined as anything that you want your outcome to be as it relates to a service. How can you ensure that you deliver that? So that can be specific treatment in terms of latency, shortest path, redundancy and resiliency mechanisms. Maybe you want to be geo-specific, maybe you want to be security specific, and where some combination of these things really describing business intent and translating that into how the network delivers that, and we do that in the context of slicing. So this programmable network is how we're really realizing AI as we define new AI characteristics on how the network needs to treat it, but also our existing services in portfolio. So this is very much a network that we're building from what we've been building for quite some time. Maybe we can go to the third slide here. Yeah, and this third slide is talking about secure connectivity. Now we've taken that network that we had with 2 different data centers. We had the campus, we've added a branch router, and now we've gotten a little bit more specific in terms of what's happening in that transport layer and network infrastructure in between our edge routers. Those edge routers, they instantiate the service, right? They define how a particular service going from a campus to a data center or multiple different sites, how that is actually realized within those network slices and segment routing definition of that service. But in addition, they can assign security policies. One of the things that we've spent a bunch of time looking at is encryption of this data, and specifically with AI, when you're starting to make that amount of data that in a lot of cases is proprietary, as you start to put that into the network, you have to ensure that this is protected, and not only protected, but protected in this quantum world in a quantum safe way. So when somebody wants to do a replay attack at some point in the future, and really not that far in the future before people can really do this, your encryption is still safe. And so we've implemented that as a best practice in our encryption protocols. And then you can take that functionality, code these individual links that have that ability, put those together as a service, and use our programmable network to realize a secure path following only encrypted paths from point A to point B, and ensuring that. The second part of our security stack really is this addition that we've had in terms of blocking bad actors from DDoS attacks at the very edge. A typical solution leverages flow spec and has some sort of central scrubbing center or appliance that's implemented. We believe using an ML-based agent on the router, we can detect attacks much faster and block those attacks real time and cut down the cost of blocking DDoS attacks and fight some of the AI fueled attacks with equal technology or better technology on blocking them and adapting to new attacks much quicker. So how can we really protect our network from bad actors via that? So we have a DDoS edge protect solution that we put in place. And then third, and this probably should be first, is ensuring the integrity of the routing elements themselves, both at the hardware and at the software layer. So ensuring you're using authentic Cisco hardware and software, and then visualizing that, and we have a solution for that with Trust Insights. So all of these things collectively provide secure connectivity. Maybe we go to the next slide. So I want to make sure we have time for the panel discussion. So putting all this together, we believe the service providers really have an advantage relative to this new ecosystem in the AI world around providing connectivity. The fact that the service providers have a relationship, an established, well-proven relationship with their customers, and they have facilities in terms of distributed power, proximity to the endpoint, cooling, and space, there is definitely an opportunity to work with that ecosystem and build incremental revenue on top of AI connectivity. So we believe there's a significant opportunity. And this coupling, maybe we can go to the next slide, this coupling of function and being in the right place at the right time and using some of these solutions that we have, they're starting to play out across our customer base. We've been seeing this over the past couple of years now, where we have some representatives on here. Aurelian, we have a representative from Aurelian. We'll talk to Jawad here in a second, but other providers that are publicly professing dramatic savings in terms of implementing some of these technologies that I just talked about in their network. So you can see some of the OpEx, cost per bit, return in terms of fiber capacity on the Lumen side, CapEx and OpEx savings across the board here. So, and the simplicity side, Swisscom, I really like that one where they've condensed 20 different domains down into one SRv6 domain. The operational simplicity of that is amazing. So our solutions are playing out in a very favorable way. So thank you for the time, and I'm looking forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Andy. And just before we, you can stay on, Andy, because we're going to just run quickly with the audience while the panelists join us. We're going to run a poll. So everyone in the audience, wake up. We're going to ask you to participate here and share with us your experience, either your operator, if you work for an operator, or if you don't work for an operator, but you know an operator that you work a lot with. We want you to share with us, and this is anonymized, so we won't chase you down, but we want to share with us, to what extent do you think your operator is addressing the opportunities that we've outlined in the presentation? Please select, do you think that essentially your operator has made no changes, it's happy with its service mix today, and it's business as usual, and there is nothing unique about the AI journey of enterprises that requires a change? Select that option. If you think that your operator is making some changes, but mainly launching new applications and not really any fundamental changes to the bulk of the core existing services, select the second one. If you think, well, actually, our operator is rethinking our infrastructure and actually making some preparations for major challenges to address the opportunity associated with AI, particularly enterprise AI adoption. If you think that you're already making substantial investments in key domains. And then finally, if you're already way down the track and you've adopted big changes, you've made some major implementations already, select the last one. So I'm just going to give you a few seconds to digest these, and please, audience, could you pick one of these poll options? I'll count you down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Can we close off that poll, please, Jake? And can we share back the results? Do we get to the results? Here we get the results. Okay, thank you very much. So the results, interestingly, there's a little bit of a difference here. We've got about a quarter of you who have made no changes at all, business as usual. AI doesn't need anything different. There's about a third of you, just over a third, you're saying the operators are making some incremental changes. Again, another, well, about a fifth actually is rethinking. Some are making substantial, and a very few number have actually made big changes. So I would say overall the audience is saying earlier in the life cycle, yes, we're making changes, but it's more minor. Some are rethinking bigger infrastructure. I think that's helpful for the panelists to help keep that off. And in fact, I'd like to turn to the panelists. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank again Matthias and Jawad. It's great to have Iridium, I think the biggest internet backbone. So you've got a particular perspective. You're seeing a lot of the changes early, perhaps earlier than most. It's great to have you on and share your observations about any detection and changes in demand. And Jawad, having you on to also share the experience of Telenor. Not only is Telenor a fairly innovative operator, but you've also gone further than most when it comes to that AI factory, the AI infrastructure, and hoping to share with that. So thank you both for joining. Can I just quickly turn to you, Matthias? Any surprises there with the scoring? Any observation you'd make on that poll?
No, I think every operator is kind of early in the journey. I think we're all thinking about what to do with this. We're all discussing that at every management meeting we have, and it's all about what. But I don't think anyone really knows where this is going to pan out and who's going to be the leaders and who's going to be the followers and everything. So I think we all think about it. It's hard to go all in on something. So I think that kind of represents what I would have guessed before. Most are early in the journeys.
Thank you. And Jawad, Telenor has made some early investments. You've got your own AI factory, which we hope to hear about. Any observations you'd make on that, or do you think that also reflects your feeling in that earlier stage in figuring out where and what the opportunities are?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. No, I think I share, what Matthias said. I think that most of the telcos, they are at the early stage of exploring. And also, it's a lot of AI is driven by the hype around it as well, right? And I think that Now that it's been around 2 years with the latest wave of Gen AI, so people are starting to analyze and think, okay, what is the ROI, and what is the returns from all the work and effort that we have put so far as well. So I think that it quite reflects where we are and where the telco industry in general and many other industries as well.
Okay,
they are.
Thanks. And Andy, you obviously deal with a lot of operators globally. Was that a surprise? Is that sort of reflect your experience in the conversations you're having?
I mean, to me, it's a pretty good representation of the cross section of customers that we talk to. Lots of opportunity that the community can capitalize on, and I think it shows that that's still there, and people are evaluating what potentially could happen. I do think, Jawad, you kind of brought up a point about ROI. I think there are a faction of the operator community that's a little bit gun shy on going after opportunities because they've burned in the past on not capitalizing or not being able to capitalize on some other inflection points that we've seen with 5G and cloud. So, and
we do discuss this in the paper, which I keep promoting, this notion of the cloud experience for operators wasn't great. I just want to remind the audience, please post your questions here. We will try and get around to them. I do have a question in the meantime while the questions come in. My first question to the panel is, where do they see the long-term growth opportunities in supporting customers' AI journey? So again, I'll turn to you first, Matthias. Where do you see the longer-term opportunity for operators to support that journey?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question and something we think about. And I really, really think it is in the connectivity space. I think in the beginning, Kuba showed that only 9% is what the enterprise believe the operators will do for them, because the ecosystem here is such a big ecosystem. You have the hyperscalers, you have many sort of tailor-made AI factories. There's a lot of AI companies. I find it hard to believe that many operators will take a bigger role in AI than just connectivity. I really hope Jawad and Telenor make it through, but I really feel our role will probably be in the connectivity space, and then obviously with the help of Andy and his products, we need to run our backbone the smoothest and the best we can at the lowest cost with the highest throughput of traffic, and I think that's going to be our role. Obviously, Aurelian is in a special space here because we're all focusing on the connectivity of the biggest routes for the biggest companies. But I think the opportunity for us is really in the connectivity space. Make it super good, super reliant, very diverse. Obviously, AI is going to help ourselves in our operations, but I think our focus should be on connectivity. I find it hard to believe that many operators will succeed in the AI space, knowing that there is like thousands of companies that want to take a share of that pie.
That's a really interesting point. It is obviously incredibly competitive. It is it's a big wave, but there's a lot of surfers on it. So finding your spot and paddling furiously to catch the wave is non-trivial. And I'm going to come back to that and also come back to your experience of which elements of connectivity, because it's not just the DC interconnect. You're seeing business beyond that sort of the below the iceberg, as we say. You're seeing customers driving adoption as well, and we'll come back on that later in a question. But Jawad, can I follow up with you? And I don't want you to contradict Matthias, but I know that Telenor is exploring opportunities beyond connectivity. So where are you considering the long-term growth opportunities? Do you have a slightly broader view in terms of where you see those for Telenor?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, of course, the connectivity is extremely important, right? That's like the core of what we do. But I think that to be a part of this long-term growth opportunities, we need to position ourselves in this bigger AI ecosystem, right? And in that bigger AI ecosystem, and especially now in the space that we are at, given the geopolitical situation that we are in, given the rise of sovereignty and regulations, and the privacy kind of restrictions and laws, I think that there is space for telco operators to provide this not just connectivity, but also the infrastructure to support the capabilities that this connectivity has to leverage. And I think that's where Telenor and Telenor AI Factory is coming from.
Yeah, and I think if we had invited operators from Ireland or from the Baltics, they have an even more acute sense that they need to bring capability to the nation, because they are concerned that even the connectivity links could be compromised. So they're looking for more sovereign, and we have some of those conversations. But turning to you, Andy, I mean, you obviously you've discussed that Cisco supports operators in many ways, not just connectivity, but also around security and other services. Where are you seeing, where do you believe those longer term opportunities reside for operators?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a difficult question. I think Matthias covered this early in terms of no one really like anybody who says they absolutely know how this is going to go is probably lying. But I would say, depending on who we talk about and where they are in the world, the conversation is a little bit different because the geopolitical realm around them is a little bit different. Their customer density within their region is a little bit different. But I think if you boil it all down, there's the set of customers we talk with that are very focused on connectivity. And I think that's table stakes, as Jawad said. You have to provide that. That's the core, service provider mission is connectivity. And doing that and I agree with you, in a secure way. But layering on top of that, I think because of the proximity to end customers, the footprint that a lot of providers have in terms of COs that are really close, where they can put compute infrastructure, where they have maybe power availability. So if you go ask the hyperscalers what's the number one thing they need in order to realize these AI use cases, power. And so service providers that have that available to them, they have a unique resource that others do not. And so how do they use that? So can they just provide the facility and rent it out like they have done with CDNs and caching for video? That's like from my standpoint, a relatively easy step for service providers to take. I know I'm trivializing that, but that's another layer. Can you go even further and actually own the AI workloads? And be part of that larger AI ecosystem and deliver vertical specific LLMs where you're talking to a medical or retail or somebody else where they have specific LLM use cases that they want to realize, and the service provider can claim responsibility for the data that's put in there from a sovereignty standpoint, and deliver a specialized LLM and own the infrastructure that houses it. I think that's possible, and we do see some providers doing that.
Great. No, thanks for that. And that shows, to our point, early in the journey, trying to figure out, I think that qualifies that. So my next question, Kuba did show this, and we do speak to many operators who yet to date have not seen much impact of AI adoption, their customers' AI adoption on network traffic, at least on their networks. And they're a little skeptical that there will be much impact. I want to ask, and I know the answer, which is why I'm asking you, Matthias. What is that experience at Aurelion, and what evidence have you got to say, well, actually, no, there is an impact on the network?
Yeah, no, it's kind of the question we get every day and something we think about. Have we seen any AI traffic in the network, and is there an increment in traffic on top of the traffic we already served before? I would say that the traffic grew in August. In the internet backbone, which is quite unnormal for us. It's seasonality, and traffic usually goes down in July, August, and then September is the best month of the year, and we're all hoping that's the same this year. But we saw some growth in August, and we hope that's a trend that's going to start with AI and so on. And the good thing also is that the last couple of weeks, we have received quite a large sort of request for proposals from AI companies requesting a lot of traffic from us. A lot more than normal customers usually start with. So that's a good sign as well that something is going to happen. Then obviously the hyperscalers are gearing up big time, but the problem is that they're mostly after fibers because they want to build their own networks. And it's hard to convince them not to go there because, yeah, obviously we believe we're good at building networks, but they believe they're good as well. So, but there's a huge sign from the hyperscalers that they really want to be prepared when the traffic takes off. But we start to see some good signs from other AI companies wanting to sort of secure their backbones before the traffic comes. So there are some signs in there. If you would say, do I see a lot of AI traffic today? Probably not. But it's probably not until 2027 either that we hear. So hopefully during the sort of last part of this year and early next year, we will see some real signs of AI traffic in our network that we haven't seen before.
Well, it's terrific to have Aurelian sharing the very hot off the press latest trends of the last few weeks. So brilliant timing to hear from that. And perhaps we are seeing a little bit more of that pick up. And we are also seeing more demand coming from enterprises directly, not just the hyperscalers, not just the AI companies. So maybe you heard it here first. But thank you for sharing that update with us, Matthias. And Jawad, I put Telenor more broadly in the skeptical camp because I know that you are open to being convinced, but have yet to be convinced. What would you say your views are regarding initial impact on networking from AI applications and use cases, customer use?
Yep. No, I think that we're going through like this first wave of generative AI and agentic AI applications. And if you look at like where the biggest concentration of the applications, that's mostly either in the offices or at home where you have like these fixed networks, because we haven't seen a really great adoption of or integration of AI into basically in our everyday life, or our kind of when we are commuting, what kind of applications are we using, and how much of these applications are getting infused with AI. But if you look at the trend, I think that we are where internet was in its early phase as well. It was mostly concentrated around research, maybe emails, some commerce, but now we see that it's everywhere, right? And I think that we will see the same kind of adoption and same kind of integration of AI in our daily, everyday use applications, and probably that's where we'll see most of the influx or the rise of traffic on access networks.
Yeah, and that's sort of pretty much what our findings are with the research. It sort of confirms our findings. It's a slightly longer impact. Also, a lot of substitution, so it's not as if that is all new. Some of it is substitutional in terms of behaviors. Great. And my third question to you, and we are getting some questions in, so thank you, the audience who are submitting your questions. My third question quickly to you is, initially we heard a lot about the need for AI networking to support latency, and it's a latency challenge. But we're seeing more, we're thinking less about latency sensitive and more around reliability, resilience, and loss reduction. Would you agree with that? I'm going to start with Andy. Would you agree with that actually it's turning out to be a slightly different ask than originally anticipated?
Yeah, so I actually, and this will maybe dovetail into the last question about bandwidth increases. I came from, actually, maybe just touch on that for a second, and then I'll talk about the latency one. I just came from a conference last week where we're looking at major, primarily North American providers, where they were looking at bandwidth growth. And one of the assertions that was made is like, there are no more hours in the day to drive incremental bandwidth growth because it has been driven by video. Like there's only so many screens and so much time people can watch stuff. So it kind of flatlined. So any growth that we are seeing right now, it's got to be, it doesn't have to be, but I think there's a large probability that it's AI driven. And I think that leading into the latency conversation, the bandwidth growth and the requirement around latency is a direct relationship with the actual AI use cases that are being done. And right now, the most of the AI use cases are just chat conversational stuff. And if you're just asking text-based questions upstream, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of traffic. And in a lot of cases, you're going to be asking for images or maybe creating some fancy video with Quentin Tarantino and whatever else that they're going to send a bunch of traffic down, which will look very similar to the CDN side of things. But as we get more complex, we start to send video upstream to be processed and analyzed, or large data sets or huge configurations that need to be processed and run across multiple agents, you'll see a lot more bandwidth. And with those complexity of use cases, some of them will be latency sensitive. But right now, the latency is really in the compute, not the network, really. From an orders of magnitude perspective. And so really the requirements we typically hear are the network needs to work and predictably work all the time and be reliable and measurable on the outcomes it's delivering.
Yeah, and I think to Kuba's point, if you're in the middle of a tuning or a learning cycle and you get an interruption, that's a nightmare. You have to restart, very expensive implications. It becomes really critical, the uptime. I'm conscious of time. I'm going to ask you to rush through some questions. So questions come in, Jawad, for you here. It's quite a long question, so if you could try and, from Max. Max has asked you, when you set up your own AI factory, how did you come to determine the rack densities that you would build? And I think the compromise here is between wanting to not spend too much and yet making sure that you future-proofed the efficiency and performance of the factory. So how did you think about that problem?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So our approach is that we are starting small, right, and then we're organically growing as the demand increases. So there is no like initial kind of heavy influx of GPUs. It's based on the growth and it's based on the demand. Okay,
thank you for the short answer. And I've got a quick one for you, Andy, which is the role of the LLM agent within the Cisco solution for the programmable network. So how are you adopting large language models for that programmable agent?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short too. Sorry, I was long-winded before. This is more under the umbrella of autonomous networks and driving AI ops into the network. We do have utilities that we built into our Cisco Crosswork solution. There are other automation solutions that cover other parts of the network that are also using AI in Cisco, but my group works on Cisco Crosswork. We are looking at specific use cases. The first two use cases that we've put together are something called toxic factor identification and config drift, where we're comparing things, applying ML against that, learning what those configs should be and identifying, or what those network conditions should be, and identifying anomalies and calling them out and bringing them to the attention of the operator. But those will continue to grow. We have a list of like, I don't know, 30 plus different use cases like that we will be operationalizing in that product portfolio.
Great. I'm conscious of time, so there's a question here that Hassan has actually asked for Kuba, who's not on the panel, but Hassan, I can answer on you've asked in terms of consumer offerings and AI-backed products. What trends are we seeing? Well, we do, STL Partners, track this. We have a tracker. We publish the tracker. We will be sharing the research, and there will be links in the research towards our tracker. You can also find it on our website. I'm afraid we're kind of running out of time, so I'm going to basically wrap up now. And what I would like to do, I would like to thank obviously our panelists today and our presenters today. I'd like to thank Cisco for sponsoring both our research and this webinar. So thank you, Cisco, for that. I would like to obviously thank our two panelists, our other panelists, Matthias and Jawad, for coming on and sharing their experience and being very open on how you're tackling this opportunity. I'd also like to thank the STL team who have made this happen in the background. That's Jack and Jake and Jonas, 3 Js. Thank you guys for helping make this all happen. And I'd like to thank you, the audience, for participating and for submitting your questions. We will be sharing this document. We will also be sharing our responses to the questions. And I'm afraid we didn't manage to answer all the questions, but we answered most of those, and we'll be sharing the links to our event as well as the recording. So thanks everyone, have a good day, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.